Good evening. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, we welcome our community to our May 2026 Board Workshop. This meeting is now called to order at 5 p.m., and we have all trustees in attendance. Let the record reflect that a quorum is present, that the meeting has been duly called, and that notice of the meeting has been duly posted for a time and manner as required by law. Beginning our meeting at agenda item number 3, public comments. Ms. Taylor, do we have any public comments? With no public comments submitted, we will proceed with our agenda. Agenda item number 4, consider an act on the Texas Reading Academy Local Implementation MOU. Dr. Tinsley.
Thank you. This is an annual MOU that we engage in with Region 10, and what it provides is that we are required for a teacher in grades K through 3 is required to complete the Reading Academy training within 2 years after being employed. So we contract with Region 10 to train a trainer and to have access to the training materials. So that is basically what this MOU includes.
No substantial changes to what we've done previously? No.
This has been the same process we followed, and pretty much the same pricing has been the same the last 2 years.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor, please both say aye and raise hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item number 5 is our budget workshop. This is our 6th budget workshop as we diligently look ahead to the 26-27 school year. Mr. Willman.
Good afternoon, evening, early evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Cordell. So tonight, for Budget Workshop 6, we will introduce the Interest in Seeking Fund and give a little bit of a bond update as it relates to the budgeting for the INS fund. And then give you an update on where we are with the M&O multi-year financial outlook, and then go through next steps. So we do have here today Mr. Witt to present on our bond program and where we are with our debt service. But before I hand it over to Mr. Witt, just wanted to kind of share a little bit so that way you have in the back of your mind as you're hearing his presentation on kind of the why as he is presenting and the recommendation that we will be making as it relates to the 26-27 budgeting for the INS fund. So what we have here is, you may recall that back in August, the end of August of 2025, we issued the first installment of our 2025 bonds. And where we stand right now, when we see as far as available funds for the different projects, we have through the end of March, $87.7 million of available bond proceeds. You may recall last week during our bond update, Mr. Percival shared the timeline for the major projects where a majority of those bond proceeds from the first installment will fund. And you can see that most of the projects here, the construction phase starts in the summer of 2027. So for the 26-27 year, there's not a need for a second installment and additional bond proceeds, because we have plenty that will be able to fund and get us through until the summer when a majority of the cash outflows will occur. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand that on over to Mr. Witt.
Quick
yes.
question, Thomas, before Mr. Witt starts. On
Yep.
the 2024 tranche that we drew, and there's roughly 8.9 remaining on that, if I'm looking at that right, with work in progress.
That's correct.
How long do we have before that money has to be spent? Isn't there a certain
Great
timeline on that?
question. Ideally, we have to have it spent or a promise to spend within 3 years from when we issued them. So I believe we issued them in May of 24. So we'll have until May of 27.
So a little less, or right around a year left to
Right around a year. Yes, sir.
allocate that money.
Yes, sir.
What about, do we have still 2014 bonds remaining, or have those all been spent now?
Those are, the 2024 tranche is part of the 2014, the remaining of the 2014 bonds. Yep.
Okay. Good evening. It's good to be back with you. Appreciate the opportunity. So I do have a presentation in front of you. Some of the information in here is what I would call proprietary model for me. It's my document for me, but I'm going to share some of it with you tonight, and then I'm going to share the public documents as well. but I think all of it will be beneficial into letting you know where we stand and what's the game plan going forward, and touch on some of the new laws and new regulations as if you need more. I heard the term budget workshop. It's not getting any easier to run an enterprise that's called a public school here in Texas. So with that, this is my presentation. I'm going to start behind tab 1. It's very number intensive, but it's really for me to articulate to you what's going on using a visual. There's no test after this about any number or any spreadsheet in here. And these models are dynamic models, and you will see that as we move forward. So on the first spreadsheet within tab 1, at the very top, you'll see preliminary bond program analysis, February 3rd, 2025. So this was us in our proprietary model saying, okay, we have some short-term assets, we have some medium-term assets, and we have some long-term assets. So, you know, $200 million of bonds are not the same if it's $200 million of bonds for technology or $200 million of bonds for school facilities. So you can see there in column 3, 4, and 5, for example, we broke it up into category A, facilities, category B, capital, category C, technology. And we hypothetically picked the amounts, and we hypothetically picked the date. So the first in green highlight 3, 4, and 5 was August 15, 2025. And just 2 assumptions after that, and that's all they are, is assumptions. February 15, 2028, August 15, 2030. And what we're demonstrating here is the ability to finance the assets over their useful life, build it into an overall model that's called your INS budget, and ensure that we're able to keep 50 cents in column 16. And in order to do that, this is what we call a growth model. So you'll see in column 15 some growth highlighted in green of about 200 million per year, okay? Short answer to today's discussion is we are ahead of schedule on this bond model, and it's performing well, okay? And I'll show you that in a moment. With that, if you'll flip to the next page, the next page is the summary of the sale of the first installment of bonds that we provided to you on August 6, 2025. On the second bullet point, you'll see that we pulled $75,910,000 from Proposition A, $2,220,000 from Proposition B, $1,505,000 with Proposition D, and $700,000 from Proposition E. Now, those were starting points. Those were numbers that were kind of selected but not tied immediately to every specific project. And you may recall the discussion of we're issuing this amount of bonds because state law and state funding is changing according to timing. The more bonds that we sell is not meaning that you need to spend it over the next 3 months. It is because it would pick up, hold harmless, and protect all of that. So that leaves you with $189 million, and still in bullet point 2, $600,000 of Proposition A, $1,710,000 of Proposition B, remaining authorized but unissued. Again, number intensive, but on the next page is the spreadsheet model that's important to us as we were building your first year of budget under the bonds that were approved by voters. So here we stick with the model, but in this category we put it in the Proposition A, the Proposition B, Propositions D and E. Your propositions are slightly different than my asset category class, okay? So this broke it down by proposition for purposes of what we were selling and issuing. You can see the structure of the bonds where we've had accelerated principal for the technology and the capital, actually accelerated way in advance of the useful life of those particular assets. We accelerated principal in column 3 for the facilities, and then we layered in the rest of the payments, leaving you with a profile that's illustrated in column 6. So the $23 million was designed to be essentially a balanced budget with accelerated principal from the first installment. And then it drops down in column 6 to the placeholder for when it becomes time to issue some of the authorized but yet unissued bonds. There is a place for those to go within the context of the 50 cents. So a very substantial drop-off. Column 11, this was August of '25, a round number of $4,350,000. Column 8 is additional state aid for homestead exemption. To make a long story short and a lot of technicality short, there will be some substitution of column 11 with increase in column 8. And that was from the new law and the additional homestead exemption. But the model is on target as we speak, with built-in drop-off for when it is that you need to access the money to continue your facility and capital improvements. The next page is just a reminder that in December of '25, under the timing given to us by federal tax law, we did a small blocking and tackling financial refunding of bonds that were outstanding at 5% coupons. We saved, total debt service savings was $2.6 million at the bottom of that page. And then again, going to my model, the next page is the spreadsheet that concludes with that refunding. It looks exactly like what you had before, except we reduced the payments by the amount in column 8. So we shaved about $200,000 off the top of your debt service. So what was $17 million is now $16 million plus, and that's reflected in column 11. As I mentioned before, column 16 in this model went from $4,350,000 to $4,150,000, so that's doesn't sound good, right? But our 13 column went up. So we gave up local revenues for state revenues as reflected there, and essentially have a balanced budget. Column 14 shows a deficit of $200,000. The prior model showed it essentially balanced, but that's within the working rounding amounts that we have. So with that, again, the bond model's on schedule. 50 cents is very doable, and we have a drop-off in column 11 pending the next time that you need to issue additional bonds. That's reflected in behind the blue divider page. You have the outstanding voted bond debt service. Column 15 is exactly what I just described for you in the spreadsheet model, but I'm doing something also here in column 5 and 7. You have two series of bonds in red at the top, say any date, meaning that they are prepayable or callable at this time on any date. And column 7 will become callable and prepayable in February of our 26-27 fiscal year. So while we are not needing to issue our authorized but unissued bonds to fill in that drop-off from 23 to 16, what we do, instead of selling bonds before we need them, we accelerate the payments on existing bonds, creating that space, additional space, for the new bonds when it becomes time to issue. These will be our target, column 5 and column 7, in the fiscal year 26-27 for accelerated repayment pending the next issuance of new bonds that would then fill in the debt service profile in column 15.
When we prepay, are we just focusing on the highest interest rates first?
We're focused on the longest principal payment and the highest coupon, a combination of those two. And it can create some kind of temporary debt service potholes, if you will, where we have smooth debt service and fading debt service. If I pick one bond that's the best one, it may take that bond out, leaving a spot in, but that will be filled in as we do the debt service going forward with new bonds. But yes, the footnote B and C outline the coupon rates. The column 5 bonds are outstanding at 3.5% and 4%. The column 7 bonds are outstanding at 4% and 5%. The column 7 bonds are smaller than the column 5 bonds. So we will go to the column 7 bonds first until we exhaust that. Then we will go to the column 5 bonds. And those are the two that are highlighted in yellow. Any other questions on this section? If not, let's flip to tab 2. Tab 2, I put the historical statistics in. Column 2 is your net taxable value. Some of this is review material to tell us that and show and illustrate that we are on schedule with our financial model for the bonds. But column 2, if you look towards the bottom, you'll see the $4 billion, the $4,112,000, and the $4,350,000 is red and a round number. That is a preliminary number, a preliminary assessment. Behind the blue divider page, you're going to see the data that has been sent to the district from the appraisal district. And again, there's a lot of numbers there. It's me just showing that Thomas's job is not very easy. It's, we get a lot of data points, and then we have to analyze it. But the two things here, column 2, $4,350,000 is up. In column 3, if I take you back to that proprietary model that I was using to kind of assess where we are, is an overall plan that may come to fruition. We had $200 million of growth in the taxable value. Well, you've grown $300 million in column 3, were it not for the homestead exemption. So we swapped taxable value for additional state aid for homestead exemption. But in column 3 at the bottom, the $237 million on a preliminary basis, to be fair, it is a preliminary number, is still on that same projection that we need at that $200 million level of growth per year. So we've had essentially 2 years of the $200+ million growth, so the bond model continues to outperform. Our issuance of bonds is not piled all into upfront. And so we're on track. Another way to say that we're on track, column 10, is your INS fund balance. A small potential drop down from 7.8 to 7.5 this year. May have a small deficit budget as planned, but $7.5 million is more than we need to carry for our current payments. We have a massive drop off in our current payments, but that's got to be filled in with debt service retirement because we have more bonds to issue. And the $7.5 million we have not deployed yet. We continue to retain that as a protection, a conservative protection for the district. It's very, very healthy, and going forward, if you grew at $150 million, for example, that money is the offset to that particular component or parameter to our bond model. So very healthy in column 10, very healthy in column 3, and again, for those that may watch this on video, we've been at 50 cents for a long time. We promised 50 cents, and we are on target for 50 cents. So for those who like numbers and the data that's coming, that's behind the blue divider page where there's raw numbers coming from the appraisal district on 3 different dates. So there are 3 different sets of numbers. I will just point out 2 things here. Number 1, if you looked at your neighbors who are appraised by Collin County as well, they don't have as much differential before freeze taxable value and after freeze taxable value. So estimating your INS tax collections is a little bit of more of a challenge than it is for those who are very narrow in the before freeze and the after freeze. Before freeze shows a certain amount of revenues. After freeze shows a different set of revenues. So you have to do both components in this district very precisely to get to the estimate of INS fund revenues on a tax basis. And you're shown there in the middle at $4.83 billion, and then over to the right in blue at $3.7 billion. That's a huge difference percentage-wise in taxable value on the before and after freeze. And we've known that, it's been that way in this district for a long period of time. But we're using essentially a medium point. When you see the number $4,350,000 from us, it is in between those 2 numbers on an estimate of how we think you will collect taxes in the district. The second page that looks like this in your packet, that is a midterm preliminary estimate. It's not apples to apples with the other 2. When we get this, we thought, okay, now it's going from small amount to much bigger amount. But then the third page that's right behind this that they give us takes us right back down to the first page. So the middle page is really just a head fake for us. It's not really relevant. It's the first and the third page that Thomas needs to work with in terms of tax revenue. Any questions on the tax base INS fund balance? If not, I'll go to the last one, which is everybody's favorite topic, and that is new legislation. So I'm going to attempt to explain the unexplainable. So we have a new bill, Senate Bill 1453, that says when you set your tax rate, you have to follow different steps, okay? The good news is that they recognize that prohibiting early redemption and early payoff of principal and saving the interest cost, that's not a good legislative priority. So after 2 sessions of attempting to restrict your debt management techniques in local school districts determined by school boards, what we got is this third version, which is you have to state what your minimum debt service tax rate can be. Well, minimum debt service means that we have all these bonds that we haven't issued, and we're being good stewards by not issuing before we need them, but it means that our minimum debt service is actually lower than it was this year. So we have to state what the tax rate would be for this lower debt service, even though we need the budget capacity for the remaining bonds that we need to issue over time, okay? So you will have to go through a form and say your minimum INS tax rate is X. Let's say it goes to 30 cents. I don't know what the number's going to be, but 30 cents. And then the third bullet point, you're going to have to approve a higher debt service tax rate, the 50 cents that you promised your voters and you've been keeping and been at for all of these number of years, okay? So to do that, you're going to have to state the minimum debt rate, the proposed higher rate, the difference between the two rates, and then the purpose, okay? Our purpose is obvious. We have a bond program to implement, right? But our real purpose is going to be for early redemption and early debt service retirement of those 2 bonds that were highlighted in yellow, pending when you need to issue new bonds and fill in those blanks, okay? So you'll have to adopt a resolution at the time of adopting your tax rate that reinforces the stated purpose in your motion, which is we need to do the higher rate for early principal retirement, okay? And for a district that does technology and capital as part of your bond program, that's a critical component by continuing this early debt retirement that we're talking about. And then it has to be approved by 5 of 7 board members. And I don't know the status, but we can work through the status of when we have 6 or whatever. But in essence, we need 5 board members to vote yes for that. Unfortunately for you, it doesn't end there. It ends there for me. But then you go into the third bullet point, and now you have to go through additional steps for the maintenance and operating tax rate with definitions of no new revenue tax rate, et cetera. Again, you have to vote on that by 5 to 7. And there are additional procedures if there are additional revenues. How this is going to play out in the context of what you've done before and what everyone else has done before in those rules that determine what a value-added tax rate election are to be determined. I do not anticipate you getting to that. I'm just anticipating that you needing 5 of 7 board members to adopt your tax rate overall, even if that tax rate is coming down. Okay?
I guess a quick question on that for Thomas. So I definitely understand the desire to explain the difference from the no new revenue tax rate in a municipality. I'm not understanding how that applies to a school district that's given a worksheet from the TEA on how to calculate its M&O rate.
Yes, and that's something I need to better understand to be able to articulate myself and bring forward. So on the May 18th, I will try to gain as much understanding in how to articulate that and for a school district and share that with the board and the community.
So in layman's terms, and again, I'm not the expert on that, in layman's term, I don't think it's going to give you what they call that MCR rate, and then if you had pennies above the MCR rate to capture state aid or eliminate or reduce recapture, and even though that total rate was below the rate that it was a year before, it's still a tax ratification election. I think what this one is more along the lines of if your tax base grows and you keep your tax rate the same, then you will have new revenue, okay? And because you have new revenue, we're going to need a supermajority of the board to vote to approve that, even if the tax rate is at or below it was last year.
That part makes sense to me, except that that's just the first part of the equation is what you collect. It's not the part you keep, right? We keep per child that's enrolled on an average basis. Well, no, I was looking at the second part, which is an M&O rate. Yeah, not for INS.
It's for the
INS, I
overall
understand.
tax rate, correct.
Yeah. We've spent so much time fielding questions from our community on no new revenue, because that's a common conversation that happens at the city councils and stuff like that. But I have, since I've been on the board, it comes in a worksheet. It tells you how much your tax rate is. And so I think we'll have to think about how we're going to explain that difference, right? Because we may raise more money based on the value of the property that's being taxed, but we're not keeping all of that, right?
That's,
That is not new revenue.
you're explaining the
Yeah.
unexplainable.
Okay.
And it's, I don't know how to do it. And if you have someone that's just naturally skeptical, their eyes are going to cross just like mine do when I read the law and say, what does this mean? How does this work? But the reality is, to your point, if your tax base goes up, your tax rate stays the same, you have new revenue, but you may not keep that because it's based on the number of students that you have, even though you have to say that it's new revenue, but it's, I believe they're going to be solely focused, I could be wrong, I believe they're going to be solely focused on tax revenue and not the combination of how we're funded between state and local.
Yeah, that's,
So at the end of the day, you know, you have to go extra mileage to explain our tax rate is not going up, right? And our exemptions are going up. Our maintenance and operating tax rate has been coming down and compressed significantly. And by the way, it's just for this year because in January of 2027, we will go through another session. We've got the governor's advocating elimination of property taxes altogether. Lieutenant Governor is advocating for increases to the homestead exemption for another cycle. Where it all lands will be determined, and what the hold harmless is, if any, that comes from that, will be what we deal with. So all of this will be another painful conversation in budget year 2027. So just to conclude on the INS budget, we are on target. We're not issuing bonds immediately because we don't need the money for projects, as you define what those priorities are and what those costs are, et cetera. But you do have the ability, because we have the flexibility built in our model, to, instead of paying new bond principal when we don't need it, we accelerate old bond principal, creating the same space. It reflects itself in the bond models over time the same way. You do just have to take those extra steps as part of your tax rate setting when that occurs. Questions? Thank you all very much.
thank you, Mr. Witt. All right, so now moving on to the M&O side of things. As you may recall, so here are the different budget considerations that we have in our M&O model. So we are anticipating a deficit budget. The only change here from what we've seen from back in March is that on the compensation consideration, we are considering in the model a minimum of a 2% increase for returning staff. And at this point, we do have some information to share as it relates to the medical insurance. We had information late on Friday, so we have Ms. Koenig here to kind of walk through and give you an update on that. With that all being said, we incorporate, the model hasn't changed. At this point in time, we're still seeing about a $1.2 million deficit that will grow into FY29 to 3.7. So I'm going to hand it off to Mrs. Koenig here to discuss and walk through the medical benefits.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, just wanted to kind of go over and review what we currently are offering. Currently in the district, we have benefits that the district pays for all employees, and that's term life insurance, about $15,000 for basic life and AD&D. It's 60 cents a person, so not too expensive. We also, as you recall, have Recuro telehealth services. It covers the entire family. It's $6 a month, and each of these are monthly, so it's $6.60 a month for the district for both of these. Recuro is the telehealth service, and that is where even if you do not participate in the TRS active care, like from TRS, you can still qualify for that. It's for you and your family. So we encourage that. I know a lot of our teachers use it, especially if they have a little one that wakes up sick and can't get to the doctor the day, so they use a lot of telehealth there. The other thing I just wanted to update you on is just benefit participation, and this is fall 2025. There were 501 eligible employees at that time. That has grown a little bit, of course, but just wanted to let you know how many employees use that and the percentage. Medical, of course, is the biggest one, 273. Which is about 54% of our employees take out TRS active care. Dental is and I bolded it because we're going to talk about it. If y'all recall, every year we talk about dental because the prices go up, is 248, about 50% there. Vision, pretty high numbers, long-term disability, cancer, volunteer, employee life, AD&D, and critical illness. So just some percentages of how many employees take those out. So, as I said, we're going to talk about dental here. Last year we were with MetLife and they came back, and if y'all recall, we were on a 2-year rate guarantee. They came back with 45% increase. 45, yes. So we needed to look at some other dental plans. And so we currently, if you look at this chart, you'll see last year for employee only in that first column was 3708. And that's no orthodontist there. It was going to go to $53.77 a month per employee. That's 45% increase. That's a lot for teachers. And then especially if you have employee and children on it, you can see also from 73.48 to 106.55. So we worked with our provider and we looked at having another option going to Cigna. And on Cigna, they basically said that, hey, we can match MetLife. One thing that we did do is we looked at the providers with Cigna. 93% of the providers that we use with MetLife are actually they are currently in network with Cigna. So we felt that was pretty good. There were actually just like 5 dentists that were not in network. So we think in network we can get a better rate and a better plan. Everyone likes their dentist. They go to dentists that aren't in network, and that's why our costs are so high there. But that's something that we're actually recommending there, is to switch to Cigna. We do get a 2-year rate guarantee there. So if it goes up again, we can continue to monitor it. The next one, just wanted to let you know, these would be our carriers. Of course, dental would be leaving MetLife, going to Cigna. We're also going to offer this year, we haven't offered it before, Chubb Guaranteed Life with long-term care. And that's just age of issue. If someone young takes that out, it's like $18 a month if you're 22 years old for the rest of your life. I didn't realize how important long-term care is until this year. Wish I had done that for earlier, but yes. So that would be the only new thing we would be offering. Everything else would stay the same. And as you can see, we get rate guaranteed, a couple more for another year, and then even in 28 and 29. So we have some good rate guarantees there. As far as key takeaways, dental revenue, this is interesting. Benefit cost ratio was 96.8%. There. So you can see our revenue versus our claims so far. So that's one reason why it went up 45%. They're looking at that benefit cost ratio about 80%. So we're much higher than that. We did look at Cigna's coverage, and quoted rates they're very comparable to this year's MetLife plan coverage and that type of thing. Vision, there's no change. We're doing the 12-12-12 plan, which means every 12 months you can get new lenses, new frames, and of course 12 months of contacts there. And we have a 3-year premium guarantee with MetLife. Just in general, out-of-network claims and benefit ratio, cost ratio result in those higher premiums. Cigna provides a much larger in-network provider, and we looked at that closely. And then just we're offering, as I said, the guaranteed life with long-term in there. And then when to look at TRS benefits. Friday, the TRS board met, and we do have more information there. So basically, they had already communicated there will be at least a 10% increase in cost of medical benefits across the state. We know we're getting a 10.2% probably, and a 10.5% is what they have communicated. Rate increases, of course, are done by region. So there are some regions that are only getting 6% of a rate increase, and then some that are getting 14% of a rate increase. I mean, El Paso and some of those areas are getting higher rate increase there, but the average, they say, is about 10%. And currently, we are, last year we got 11%. We currently, as a district, contribute $350 a month for TRS active care benefits. And thanks to y'all have raised them a little bit every year, so really appreciate that. But I wanted to look at cost, and this was on the 10%. So this was all done, of course, before we knew what was going to happen at the board meeting on Friday. So basically, and this is for the employee-only active care, there are 3 plans that an employee can choose from: the primary, primary plus, and high deductible plan. And with a rate increase, a monthly increase, that would be the cost there, then the annual increase. And then I showed you monthly kind of out-of-pocket there. So for a primary, $261.60. And then, of course, after the 4,200 employee contribution that we currently have, it'd be $31.31 for a primary, $44.19 for primary plus, and then $33.24 out-of-pocket there.
And are you looking at that $350 that we're currently contributing?
Yes,
Make it
I pulled that
diverse?
out. So that would still be what they would contribute every year, correct?
Well, based on this monthly increase, I just keep clicking off of it. It looks like it's going to go up about $50 to $60
Yeah,
a month.
it's about, last year was 50, and of course, you got into the over, 550 range, because it was 500, 550, and now we're looking at closer to 600. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And will you be bringing forward to the board a recommendation to change the 350?
Correct,
Okay.
yes. As I said, because the TRS board just met on Friday, I just didn't have all the details when
Sure.
this was published. Yeah. So I'm working with Thomas very closely to come up with some alternates there. Any questions about supplemental benefits or TRS benefits? As I said, at the May board meeting, we'll bring some more information to you about that.
Thank you for continuing to try to find the very
Yes,
best
we're
path forward.
trying.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Koenig. So as far as other non-personnel expenditures in the budget, so we plan on bringing forward on the May 18th regular board meeting some of the work that we've done so far with the budget. So we will have an updated projected 25-26 year in projected results that will just, we believe that we will see a favorable outcome on that. Mainly because we've been able to identify some current costs that are allowable under bond funds. So for instance, salaries for employees that have spent a great deal of time navigating through all these bond projects, we're allowed to do a percentage of their salaries towards bond funds, and we plan on using some of the investment income to help support those costs. We also have departmental budgets that will be due May 8th, so we are seeing early indications of some areas of savings there that will help reduce that $1.2 million. And then the biggest thing that we've been working on over the past 2 months is our property and liability insurance. We have reached out and received multiple quotes from different vendors, and it's looking promising right now where we are going to see some significant savings. We originally were anticipating roughly a 10% increase in that area, but it looks like we're going to probably bring forward a recommendation to where we'll see a significant decrease in our overall annual cost
Do we get those
and
through-
better coverage.
Is the coverage through TASB?
Our current coverage is through TASB Risk Management Fund, but we are able to locate neighboring districts are using other risk management funds, so we are able to reach out to them. And we're in the early stages of, we've received 3 quotes, and we're comparing them and then going back and hoping to negotiate. But we anticipate that hopefully we'll see more coverage and less cost when we bring it forward on the 18th. So as far as next steps, as I mentioned, so on the 18th, we're going to give you an overall overview of the M&O budget and preliminary kind of where we think we're going to be with the 25-26 year, but then also updates with the medical insurance that Ms. Koenig just provided, and then also the compensation plan review, and then hopefully be able to identify a great deal of savings on the non-personnel costs, and then introduce the student nutrition budget, and then again, provide an update on the debt service budget based off of the information that we'll have from the Colin CAD and property values. And then we're also going to set a date during that May 18th. We're going to have the board consider setting a date for the June 15th regular board meeting for us to bring forward for you to consider action on adopting a budget and proposed tax rate. So happy to answer any questions.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Agenda item number 6, we will consider an act on the 2025 bond issuance for capital expenditures in an amount to exceed $75,000 for HVAC purchases. Mr. Wilbur.
Yes, good evening again. So we currently have 7 units throughout the district where the HVAC systems have reached the end of life and have experienced failure and are no longer repairable. So we want to maintain the safe and functional learning environments and replace the 4 rooftop units at the high school, 3 that are over the competition gym, 1 at the auxiliary gym. We have 1 here at the administration building, and then we have 1 each at Sloan and at Puster. We do not anticipate that the cost will exceed the $235,000. And we are asking that we're using the 2025 bonds and Proposition A to cover the cost for this.
So currently, are the buildings able to stay cool without the 1 or 2 units?
From my understanding that they're, with the heat coming soon, that it will not be able to keep it cool.
Any additional questions? If not, I will remind you that there is recommended language, motion language.
Move to approve the bond-funded capital expenditures as presented for replacement of the HVAC systems that are at the end of life and have failed in a total amount not to exceed $235,000 of bond funds.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additional discussion? All those in favor, please say aye and raise hands.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And we'll move to agenda item number 7, superintendent announcements.
Thank you, Madam President and Board. It is Teacher Appreciation Week, and our wonderful teachers are very deserving of all of the love, recognition, and appreciation that I hope everyone showers on them this week. We are so grateful for the impact that they have had and will continue to have on our students over the next 14 days. And there are 14 days left, and we are ready to finish strong. We can't believe it. It has been a wonderful school year, and I just want to extend deep appreciation for all of our amazing staff and teachers, leaders, parents, and students who have contributed to it being such an outstanding year and our students accomplishing so much.
Thank you, Ms. Cordell. And just in honor of Teacher Appreciation Week, I will echo Ms. Cordell's comments. On behalf of the board, we extend our sincere thanks to our educators for the impact that they make in our district every single day. We deeply appreciate your dedication, your professionalism, and your unwavering commitment to excellence in Lovejoy ISD. Thank you for taking care of our kids. Lastly, I will just provide an update on our board vacancy process. The board opened an application process. It was open for just a little over 2 weeks. We collected a number of qualified applications, and we wanted to extend our thanks for those that were willing to step into the role to serve our district. So the board will now begin reviewing each application in compliance with board policy BBC Legal and determining the next steps in the process. We anticipate completing a round of interviews in the coming weeks, and then we will continue to keep our community apprised of progress. At this time, the board will now retire into closed session in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act and Government Code 551.071 through 551.084. When we return from closed session, we will be for the purpose of adjourning the meeting. I do not anticipate any further meeting content or board discussion at that time. Thank you. The time is now 6:42, and the board is returning to open session. We are resuming our agenda at item number 10. There is no action to be taken on matters discussed in closed session. Therefore, we are adjourned.